On the night of their 10th wedding anniversary, Grace Morgan sat alone in the most luxurious restaurant in New York. 7 months pregnant, she quietly gazed at the empty chair across from her, the very place where her powerful husband was supposed to be. But instead of appearing, Richard Morgan, the dazzling Wall Street CEO, was openly parading hand in hand with a young supermodel in Las Vegas. While all of America buzzed with scandal, Grace simply smiled. For few knew that the abandoned woman was holding a secret capable of destroying the entire empire Richard was so proud of. In the eyes of the public, Richard Morgan was the very embodiment of the American dream. Tailored suits that fit like armor, a confident smile that never faltered, and the constant blaze of camera flashes each time he stepped out of a gleaming limousine. The press called him the King of Wall Street, a man who could alter the fate of the markets with nothing more than a lifted phone call. But behind that dazzling image, in the quiet shadows where few cared to look, there was always a woman walking a few steps behind Grace Morgan, his wife. In photographs from glittering galas, Grace often appeared half a step back, her gentle eyes fixed on her husband as though her entire universe revolved around him. To the public, she was simply Mrs. Morgan, a graceful, well-mannered wife, soft-spoken, rarely quoted, never one to stir headlines. Many reporters didn't even bother to record her profession or her personal accomplishments. Yet few knew that Grace had once been an exceptional computer science student at MIT. During her years there, she had stunned professors by rewriting an entire artificial intelligence project overnight. Friends called her the golden mind of the class. But after marrying Richard, Grace chose a different path. She stepped back, surrendering her academic ambitions, hiding away her dreams, and dedicating herself fully to being a wife, a mother, and the quiet foundation of their home. At first, that choice seemed to bring happiness. Richard expressed gratitude for her sacrifice, often bragging to friends, "If it weren't for Grace, I could never have come this far." But as time went on, and his fame swelled, gratitude slowly curdled into casual disregard. The words of praise grew fewer, replaced by glances of indifference, sometimes even irritation, whenever Grace accidentally intruded into his glittering world. Over time, Richard began to treat his wife like an accessory no different from a designer tie or the Rolex gleaming on his wrist. She was useful at public events, a charming plus one, but in private life, she was nothing more than a quiet shadow. At countless extravagant parties, people barely remembered her face. They remembered instead the dress she wore, not quite fashionable enough, or scoffed, "How odd that a CEO like Richard should have such an ordinary wife." Grace heard it all, felt it all, but she remained silent. Perhaps it was her naive faith that love alone could make up the difference. She tended to their penthouse in Manhattan, managed every dinner, every suit pressed to perfection, every party where Richard brought home his friends. Outsiders looked at her life and assumed she was wrapped in velvet luxury, but in truth, her heart often echoed with a loneliness so deep that even the grand halls of their apartment seemed hollow with the sound of her own footsteps. The cruel irony was that the more successful Richard became, the greater the distance between them grew. Rushed phone calls from the office, sudden business trips, late nights perfumed with unfamiliar scents, these became the routine rhythm of their marriage. Grace knew, of course she knew, but she kept her silence, clinging to the hope carried within her growing belly, their first child, the child she believed might tether Richard back to the remnants of his humanity. In New York's financial circles, rumors were currency, and nothing spread faster than whispers of scandal. Soon, murmurs arose. Richard was involved with Harper Lane, a young supermodel from Los Angeles, known for gracing Beverly Hills soirees. Harper was famous for her endless legs and her habit of accidentally leaking provocative photos on Instagram. The tabloids crowned her the new muse of the elite. One photograph in particular ignited the frenzy. Richard, at a lavish party, gazing at Harper with a fascination that Grace had not seen directed her way in years. Within days, New York was ablaze with speculation that Richard was about to publicly flaunt his new romance, utterly ignoring the fact that his wife was 7 months pregnant. Grace heard those rumors everywhere, even in the most mundane places. At the supermarket, a stranger whispered behind her back, "Isn't that Morgan's wife?" Poor thing. The sympathetic stares, the hushed pity, it all pierced her pride like 1,000 tiny needles. And still, she smiled. A thin, practiced smile, just enough to conceal the storm surging beneath her calm exterior. But somewhere, hidden deep within, Grace's patience, once mistaken for virtue, was transforming into something else. A quiet fire, glowing hotter with each passing day, waiting for the moment it would erupt. One Friday evening, as New York lit up its skyline, Grace Morgan returned to the quiet penthouse in Manhattan. The vast apartment, already cold by nature, felt emptier than ever. She gently rested her hand on her belly, as if to remind herself that in this lonely world, at least one small life was still growing inside her, day by day. In that fragile moment, the television flickered on by chance. A live stream filled the screen. Richard Morgan, the illustrious Wall Street CEO, raising a glass of red wine beneath the shimmering lights of Las Vegas. But he wasn't on a business trip as he had claimed. Standing beside him was Harper Lane, the young supermodel clinging to Richard's arm as though they were a flawless couple crafted for the cameras. The crowd cheered, flashes erupted, and then came the cruelest moment of all. Richard leaned down and kissed Harper openly, without shame. Seconds later, the internet exploded. A headline streamed across a major entertainment channel. Wall Street CEO Richard Morgan abandons pregnant wife for young model. Hashtags like #Richard and Harper and #Scandal CEO shot straight to the top of Twitter. New York was no stranger to scandals, but this time, Richard Morgan's name appeared side by side with the word betrayal in thousands of articles. Grace sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the screen. Slowly, she reached for the remote and switched it off. No tears, no outburst. Only a long, measured breath, as if in that very moment, a door within her heart had closed. And with its quiet shutting, another door creaked open, not one leading into darkness, but toward a path she had long kept hidden. Because Grace Morgan was never just Mrs. Morgan, the wife of a Wall Street CEO. Before she ever became Richard's wife, she had been Grace Reed, the youngest daughter of Jonathan Reed, the visionary founder of Reed Technologies, a Silicon Valley powerhouse valued at more than $800 million. Jonathan Reed was famous for his foresight and infamous for his relentless perfectionism. He built his company from a cramped garage in Palo Alto, transforming it into one of the rising stars of the tech world, a fierce rival to the software giants. Back at MIT, Grace was not only the daughter of Reed. She was the brilliant mind behind countless innovations. Her name appeared on a string of core patents, from secure operating systems to breakthrough data optimization algorithms. Within tech circles, people used to joke, if Jonathan Reed is the father of Reed Technologies, then Grace is its silent mother. Yet, when she chose marriage with Richard, Grace chose to change her name, bury her identity, and step away from the world of technology. She believed her life required nothing more than a happy family, free from the glare of recognition. Richard knew she was intelligent, but he never truly grasped the scale of her genius. To him, Grace was timid, compliant, perhaps even ordinary compared to the glittering women who orbited his world. The irony was cruel. Every core value of Reed Technologies was still shielded by patents under the name Grace Reed. That legal fortress, left by Jonathan, was also her quiet source of pride. And on the very night America mocked her, Grace understood it was time to end the charade of being the obedient wife. She rose from her chair and walked to the towering window, staring out at Manhattan's blazing lights. The city glittered, indifferent to the heartbreak of any one soul. A bitter sadness welled up inside her, but so did a spark of resolve. The woman dismissed, overlooked, and underestimated was preparing to return not with tears, but with the force of her mind and the power she had kept hidden for too long. It was almost poetic. Richard had always hungered for a seat at Wall Street's most powerful tables, yet he had never realized that within his own home lived an heir to technology who could shake the very foundation of his empire. If this were a chessboard, Richard had been too dazzled by flashy pawns, forgetting the queen that had been standing right beside him all along. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. The next morning, Manhattan hurried on with its familiar rhythm of life, but within Grace, a silent storm was rising. The woman once known as the quiet Mrs. Morgan no longer existed. She stepped into the offices of a prestigious law firm on Park Avenue, her hair neatly tied back, her face calm, and in her hands a thick file, the divorce papers against Richard Morgan. For New York's elite, filing for divorce was hardly unusual. But for Grace, this moment was not merely the end of a marriage. It was the first step in breaking free from the shadow that had crushed her for the past 10 years. To the lawyers, she did not look like just another betrayed wife. She looked like a client who knew exactly what she wanted. Meanwhile, at Sterling Capital's headquarters, Richard Morgan still wore his confident smile. He was convinced the prenuptial agreement signed from the very beginning would shield him like iron armor. At private parties, he often draped an arm around his friends and joked, half in jest, half in arrogance, "Grace could walk away any time she wants, but she won't take a dime from me." To Richard, marriage had always been a convenient arrangement, and the contract his safeguard. But he had forgotten a small clause, buried deep within those pages of legal jargon. A clause he had signed off on, believing it to be nothing more than formality. If the husband committed adultery while his wife was pregnant, the entire contract would be rendered void. Now, before a team of attorneys, the video of Richard kissing Harper Lane in Las Vegas was undeniable public evidence. That so-called formality had transformed into a live grenade in his own hands. Grace didn't need to scream, nor did she need to pour her sorrows to the press. She simply placed the contract on the table and let the cold precision of words speak for her. The most renowned lawyers in New York read through it, then exchanged glances and nodded. In this legal battle, Grace had seized the upper hand from the very first move. And yet, this advantage was only the beginning. Grace held another card Richard had never anticipated. Within a separate, carefully sealed file, she kept copies of data tied to a theft of artificial intelligence. Years earlier, when Richard sought to push Sterling Capital far beyond its rivals, he had quietly taken algorithms developed by Reed Technologies, algorithms patented under the name Grace Reed. Cloaked as innovative ideas, he had used them to build the firm's investment analysis system. To the world of finance, Sterling Capital looked like a blazing star, forecasting the market with uncanny precision, but few knew that behind its brilliance lay foundations built on stolen ground. And Grace, as co-author of the patents, possessed every shred of proof. Inside the law firm's private conference room, Grace spread out the documents, pages marked with code fragments and dated patent filings. The attorneys exchanged glances again, until one gave a dry, ironic smile. He thought a prenuptial could silence an inventor? How naive. Perhaps for the first time in years, Grace felt a measure of relief. Not the giddy triumph of watching a husband collapse, but the quiet satisfaction of finally being recognized for her true worth. For a decade, she had been dismissed as the wife behind the CEO. But now the truth emerged. It was the CEO who had hidden behind her inventions. The lawyers began drafting their strategy: divorce, annulment of the contract, division of assets, and if necessary, escalation to criminal charges. Richard was not only staring at the loss of reputation, he was facing the possible ruin of his life's work. A celebrated Wall Street CEO, suddenly rebranded as a violator of intellectual property, the mere idea was enough to set the American press ablaze. Outside, New York remained relentless, its people bustling with morning coffee and early meetings. But behind the closed doors of a conference room, another game of chess was being arranged. And this time, the opening move did not belong to Richard Morgan. Inside the federal courthouse in New York, the air was so thick it felt like it could be cut with a knife. The gallery was packed with reporters, sensationalist journalists peering out from behind their cameras. At the main table, Richard Morgan sat upright, clad in a perfectly tailored Armani suit, his gaze cold but betraying a flicker of strain. Beside him was his formidable team of attorneys, faces so seasoned they had once made billion-dollar lawsuits bow their heads. Richard believed that with this army by his side, Grace, the insignificant housewife, would never stand a chance. But when Grace's attorney rose, holding a slim file that felt as heavy as stone, the atmosphere in the room shifted at once. He opened the folder, presenting to the court a series of patents, each stamped clearly with the name Grace Reed. That name rang out like a thunderclap. The words on paper were no longer mere legal documents. They had become weapons, exposing the truth. Richard froze for an instant. He had always thought Grace was nothing but a shadow at his side. Yet those 3 words, Grace Reed, silenced the room. In that moment, every spectator, journalists, investors, even the curious onlookers, recognized the truth. The woman once dismissed as the forgettable Mrs. Morgan was, in fact, the hidden heir to Reed Technologies, the renowned Silicon Valley giant. The press erupted. Camera shutters fired in rapid bursts. Keyboards clattered furiously. Headlines were already taking shape in reporters' minds. Abandoned wife revealed as tech genius, or Wall Street CEO betrays the hidden Heiress. The media wasted no time. Within hours, social networks were flooded with stark contrasts. Richard Morgan, arm in arm, with supermodel Harper Lane beneath the neon lights of Las Vegas, set against Grace in a simple dress, sitting poised in court, her eyes burning with confidence. Audiences loved tales of reversal, and Grace was the perfect embodiment. The shockwave rippled through Wall Street. By midday, Sterling Capital's stock had plunged. Investors who once cheered Richard now abandoned him in droves. His office phone rang non-stop, not with encouragement, but with demands to withdraw, to cut losses. In a heartbeat, the King of Wall Street had been recast as a liar, a cheat, and a traitor. The cruelest irony was that Richard's arrogance had blinded him. He had dismissed the prenuptial agreement, certain Grace would never dare defy him. Yet the very clause he had ignored became the blade turned back against him. To the public, the downfall was almost comic. So the billionaire CEO was undone by his own wife in court. Meanwhile, Grace never needed theatrics. She didn't shout or weep. She simply sat in silence, letting her attorney speak. The light caught her face in such a way that, for the first time, many realized the sharp elegance hidden beneath her modest exterior. She no longer had to prove who she was. The patents and evidence spoke louder than any words. And the scandal stretched far beyond their marriage. News that Richard had stolen algorithms from Reed Technologies spread quickly through the tech world. Outlets like the Wall Street Journal and TechCrunch splashed headlines. Sterling Capital's market dominance, built on stolen code. At that pace, Richard wasn't only facing the loss of his company, he was staring at potential criminal charges. From Brooklyn cafes to San Francisco boardrooms, the story was all anyone could talk about. It had everything: love, betrayal, money, and a secret identity. Some pitied Grace, others mocked Richard, but all watched each twist unfold as though it were a living television drama. Even Harper Lane, the model so accustomed to flashbulbs, hadn't imagined she'd be cast as the villain. Her radiant smiles beside Richard were now turned into memes, compared mercilessly with Grace's calm, regal composure. What had once been a glamorous love affair had become the nation's punchline. Inside the courtroom, Richard struggled to keep his composure. His fists clenched so tightly the veins on his hands stood out. Each question from Grace's legal team sliced deeper into the flawless CEO persona he had spent years constructing. Applause had been replaced by scrutiny, admiration by scorn. When the court recessed, Grace rose and walked calmly past the press gallery. Cameras flashed again, but this time, they weren't capturing the image of a betrayed wife. They were capturing the presence of a powerful woman, reclaiming her dignity. A week after the earthquake in court, the eyes of all Silicon Valley turned toward a vast glass-covered hall. On stage, Grace stepped forward, not in the modest dress she had worn to trial, but in a sleek, commanding suit, her gaze still carrying its natural gentleness. Hundreds of international journalists aimed their cameras at her. The flashes so blinding it felt as though the entire room had ignited. The air was thick with anticipation. Please welcome the new CEO of Reed Technologies, Grace Reed. In that instant, the hall exploded in thunderous applause. The woman once dismissed as a shadow behind her husband now stood tall beneath hundreds of lenses, not as Richard Morgan's ex-wife, but as the leader of a technological empire. Grace's voice rang out calm, steady, but resolute. She declared that she would invest boldly in artificial intelligence, but not to fuel the money-making machines of Sterling Capital. Instead, Reed Technologies would expand into healthcare and education. She painted a vision of AI not for the elite, but for healing, bringing precise medical care to the poor, and opening doors to education for children in the most remote corners. The contrast could not have been sharper. On one side, Richard the man accused of fraud, who used stolen technology to manipulate financial markets. On the other, Grace the visionary with a human-centered mission, choosing compassion over greed. The American press, always hungry for Phoenix Reborn stories, instantly hailed her as a new icon of feminism. From the abandoned housewife, Grace now graced the covers of Time, Forbes, and countless technology magazines. On Twitter, the hashtag number Grace Reed shot straight to #1 in mere hours. People shared side-by-side photos. Grace in court and Grace at the podium, captioned with the line, "Never underestimate a silent woman." Thousands of women wrote, "In Grace, I see myself in those days when I was overlooked." Some men chimed in, half joking, "When I get married, I'm definitely reading the prenup line by line." Meanwhile, Richard Morgan lived through the darkest days of his life. Federal indictments crashed down on him like a judge's gavel. Investigators raided Sterling Capital's offices, dragging out box after box of files like skeletons pulled from a closet. Every evening broadcast mentioned Richard's name, but no longer with titles like Financial Genius or Wall Street King. Now the words were fraudster and technology thief. Worse still, Harper Lane, the supermodel, who had once enthralled him, abandoned him in an instant, as though their love had never existed. When the spotlight dimmed, Harper vanished too. Tabloids sneered. Harper left faster than Sterling's stock could fall. Richard had believed his fame was eternal. Yet now, in his cold penthouse, all he heard was the relentless ring of creditors' calls. The most humiliating moment came when he phoned one of his longtime investors, only to hear on the other end, "Sorry, the number you dialed no longer believes in your future." That wasn't a recorded message, it was the blunt voice of an old friend. On the opposite shore, Grace only grew brighter. She appeared at a TED conference in San Francisco, telling her story, how a woman nearly cast aside rose again, transforming pain into purpose. The hall fell silent as she closed with the words, "The truth is, the greatest power doesn't lie in the shares you hold, but in the faith you plant in people." The standing ovation roared on for minutes, and many women in the audience wept. The media called it a historic reversal. Analysts predicted Reed Technologies under Grace would not just compete with Sterling Capital, it might surpass it entirely. Healthcare giants and education networks reached out, eager to partner. Major philanthropic foundations pledged hundreds of millions in funding. And yet, not everyone celebrated. Some of the powerful men, once allied with Richard, began to fear their own secrets might soon be dragged into the light. Whispers spread that Grace was becoming too strong, that a woman with such vision could shake the very underworld of Wall Street. New shadows began to stir. When the final trial came to a close, the tension that had so often lingered on Grace's face was gone. She had not only won the legal battle, but also secured custody of her child. In that moment, the door to an entirely new life swung open. That day, New York's sky was unusually clear, as if announcing that winter had truly passed, and spring was arriving with her. Many had once whispered that Grace would fade after the scandal, that without Richard she was nothing more than a pitiful name. But Grace had never accepted the role of victim. The very moment she walked out of court, instead of fleeing from the press, she chose to confront them head-on. She announced the birth of the Phoenix Foundation, a non-profit for middle-aged American women who, after the wreckage of marriage, still longed to start over and rebuild their lives. The name Phoenix was deliberate, the symbol she wanted to send into the world. Do not fear the ashes, for from them you can be reborn stronger. By the next morning, news of Phoenix spread across every major outlet. Within days, thousands of women wrote letters, sharing their own stories. Women abandoned after 20 years of marriage. Single mothers who once thought their future was closed forever. In Grace they saw not just a role model, but living proof that betrayal does not mean you lose your worth. The most moving scene unfolded in a modest hall in Chicago, where Grace hosted Phoenix's very first event. A gray-haired woman gripped the microphone, her eyes brimming with tears. "You gave me the courage to start over at 50. The hall erupted in a storm of applause, and Grace smiled gently, replying, "Age will never be a limit. The only limit is the faith we lose in ourselves." The success of Phoenix quickly lifted Grace to new heights. She was invited to speak at Harvard, where eager students waited to hear from the woman who had become a symbol of resilience. On the old wooden podium, beneath stained glass windows that caught the light, Grace's voice resonated warm, yet unshakably strong. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is not in watching the betrayer fall, but in proving that we can rise, shine, and live a life without them. The entire hall rose in a standing ovation. The image soon spread across social media, becoming one of the most shared inspirational clips of the year. Meanwhile, Richard lived in a world that could not have been more different. From the once dazzling CEO of Wall Street, he now sat alone in a shabby rented apartment where the light slipping through torn curtains could not banish the loneliness. Old friends had vanished. Investors had turned their backs. Newspapers that once praised him now mentioned his name only with the labels fraud and financial cheat. Some even mocked. Richard Morgan went from the cover of Forbes to the back page of the comics. The cruelest irony was this. As every dollar slipped from his grasp, Richard realized the most precious thing he had lost was not wealth, but trust. The embrace of a child, the smile of a wife who once believed in him, these were gone forever. He looked around, and in the emptiness of the room, only the echo of his own voice remained. While Richard collapsed into darkness, Grace only blazed brighter. From TED stages to technology forums to evening television shows, the name Grace Reed Morgan appeared everywhere. Americans, who loved a comeback story, exalted her as a phoenix of the modern age. Yet what set her apart was not merely her victory over Richard, but the way she transformed her pain into a torch, lighting the path for thousands of other women. Phoenix was not just a foundation, it had become a movement. Many began to call it the silent revolution of American women. And you, my dear audience, brace yourselves for the next twist in this jaw-dropping story. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're truly loving what I'm doing here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe. What would you do if, just 60 minutes before walking down the aisle, you, in a bride, in your 5th month of pregnancy, caught your fiancé and your best friend since childhood embracing in the bathroom, scheming to exploit you for profit from your own father? The pain slices through your heart like a knife, your heavy belly a constant reminder of a shattered dream, urging you to collapse right then and there. But Sophia Thompson, a pediatric nurse in Los Angeles, turned her despair into an astonishing strength. Her next move not only turned the Malibu wedding into a disaster, but also inspired millions of women. If you miss this, you'll regret not knowing how she turned the tables. Sophia Thompson opened her eyes in the luxurious suite at the Lux Seaside Resort in Malibu, California, where summer sunlight slipped through the large window curtains, illuminating the wedding dress hanging with a sparkle that promised a perfect ending. On that, the 15th of July, she felt vividly that her life was unfolding like a Hollywood romance film where the heroine finally finds true happiness. At 32, Sophia had built a solid career as a pediatric nurse at Los Angeles Children's Hospital, where she poured her heart into caring for sick children, always seeing a glimmer of hope even in the toughest cases. That quality, her ability to trust and cherish others, wasn't accidental. It was forged from the profound loss at age 12, when her mother died suddenly in a car accident. Since then, Sophia and her father, Thomas, a successful real estate mogul in Beverly Hills, had become each other's rock, an unbreakable bond, much like the towering buildings he constructed on solid foundations. Thomas, with his wealth from coastal real estate ventures, spared no expense for his only daughter's wedding. He wanted this day to be a symbol of joy, especially knowing Sophia was 5 months pregnant, a revelation that thrilled him with the prospect of becoming a grandfather for the first time. He had transformed the resort's seaside garden into a romantic paradise. White chairs neatly aligned, a pathway strewn with cream, rose petals, and a live band ready to play sweet ballads. Sophia, in her white silk robe, beamed with a radiant smile as her bridesmaids gathered around her. There was her cousin Lily, always cheerful with her light-hearted jokes, her college friend Mia, her companion through sleepless study nights, and most importantly, Brooke, her best friend since 7th grade, who had shared every secret from clumsy first loves to the deepest fears. Brooke raised a glass of orange juice, her voice warm. "To my best friend, the most beautiful bride and the greatest mom-to-be." But behind that smile, if Sophia had been more perceptive, perhaps clouded by pregnancy hormones, she might have noticed that Brooke's eyes didn't quite reflect joy, and the way she furtively checked her phone every minute, as if awaiting a message from another world. 3 years earlier, Sophia met Ethan at a hospital fundraiser in the Hollywood Hills, an event aglow with flashing cameras and sleek tuxedos. Ethan, a pharmaceutical sales rep with a charming smile and warm brown eyes, approached her like a movie star, making everything else fade into the background. He was attentive to the point of being comical, sending bouquets of roses to her workplace, with notes remembering small details like her love for coffee lattes, and even winning over Thomas with his extensive knowledge of Napa Valley wines, where Thomas owned a small vineyard for pleasure. Those gestures convinced Sophia he was the one, checking every box, romantic, supportive, and ready to build a family. But life isn't a Hollywood movie, and red flags began to wave subtly late nights. He returned with vague excuses of urgent meetings without details, a defensive humor like, "Why are you interrogating me like an FBI agent?" when she questioned his schedule, or the way he gradually isolated her from male friends under the guise of, "I'm just looking out for you." Sophia, with her open heart, often laughed it off, thinking these were mere brushstrokes in a larger picture. 8 months before the wedding, Sophia discovered she was pregnant, a mix of joy and anxiety, as they had never deeply discussed children. Trembling, she told Ethan, and he responded by proposing on one knee days later, sliding a square-cut diamond ring onto her finger with the words, "The universe has confirmed you're the one I want to build a family with." That moment felt perfect, erasing all doubts, leaving Sophia floating on a cloud of bliss. She had no idea that Ethan was already betraying her with someone very close, a secret lurking like a shadow in the home they shared. Now, in the bustling resort suite, as the makeup artist applied the final touch of mascara, a knock sounded at the door. A young server named Alex stood there, holding a neatly folded note, his voice slightly shaky. "From the groom, ma'am." Sophia smiled, expecting a sweet love note, carefully opening it to preserve her makeup. But those words were not roses and honey, they were a sharp blade poised to pierce her bubble of happiness. Sophia's heart pounded like a drum in her chest as she carefully unfolded the note in the bustling bridal suite at the Lux Seaside Resort, where the laughter of her bridesmaids and the scent of roses from her wedding bouquet filled the air, crafting an illusion of a perfect day on the Malibu coast. The California sunlight streamed through the large windows, glinting off her shimmering makeup, but in that moment, everything seemed to freeze. Instead of romantic words from Ethan, perhaps a cheesy Hollywood-style poem he'd often used to make her laugh, the note delivered a ticking time bomb. I thought you should know. I just saw your fiancé and your maid of honor in the third-floor bathroom. I'm sorry. Alex, staff. Sophia read it 3 times, her hands trembling slightly like a leaf in the ocean breeze, the marble floor beneath her feet seeming to tilt, pulling her into an abyss of betrayal. Pregnancy hormones, which often made her teary during Netflix rom-coms, now amplified the pain into a raging wave. But instead of crumbling into tears, the way American movies often depict a heroine, Sophia took a deep breath, clutching her pregnant belly as if shielding her unborn child from this nightmare. She wasn't the type of woman to surrender easily. That resilience, forged through long night shifts at Los Angeles Children's Hospital, where she witnessed children battling illness, now became her armor. With astonishing calm, perhaps the instinct of a nurse accustomed to facing crises, Sophia turned to Alex, the young server with an awkward expression, his name tag glinting under the resort's crystal chandelier. Her voice was soft but firm. Is this a joke? Alex shook his head, his face as serious as a minor character in a thriller movie, and explained he was serving drinks to the groomsmen when he heard strange noises from the bathroom. Without hesitation, Sophia asked him to lead the way through a service corridor, a lesser-known backstage path, scented with kitchen food and the whispers of staff, avoiding the curious eyes of guests gathering for the 3 p.m. ceremony in the seaside garden. Each step on the narrow staircase made her heart pound harder, her right hand instinctively caressing her belly, as if whispering reassurance to her baby. Mommy will be okay, sweetheart. Alex moved ahead, his steps light, and when they reached the 3rd floor, he pointed to the men's bathroom door at the end of the quiet hallway, whispering, "They're still in there. I checked before coming to you." Sophia approached, drawing a deep breath for courage, and through a slightly ajar door, a darkly comedic oversight, as if fate was winking at her, she saw their reflection in the mirror. Brooke perched on the glossy granite counter, her legs wrapped around Ethan like vines clinging to an ancient tree, her hands stroking his hair with an intimacy that felt like a slap across Sophia's face. Brooke's voice whispered, laced with a jealousy Sophia once thought was playful. "How much longer do we have to play this game? I'm tired of being the supportive best friend when I should be the one in the wedding dress." Ethan chuckled softly, that charming smile that once melted Sophia now revealing a calculated edge. Like a Hollywood actor playing a double role. "Just a few more hours, babe. After the wedding, I'll play the devoted husband to get access to her dad's business partners in Beverly Hills. Then a tragic divorce after a year with a hefty settlement." They discussed their plan to exploit Thomas's connections, the coastal real estate projects Ethan had bragged about, and worst of all, Ethan called Sophia's baby a regrettable complication, but useful for rushing the wedding, like a pawn in a real-life Monopoly game. "She's too naive, desperate for a family after losing her mom," Ethan mocked, his tone dripping with contempt, making Sophia cover her mouth to stifle a gasp. Brooke laughed conspiratorially, her voice falsely sweet. "That's why you love me." Those words sliced into Sophia's heart like a knife, turning 3 years of love into a cheap drama. But instead of bursting in to confront them, a reckless choice that could spark a chaotic action movie scene, she quietly pulled out her phone from her robe pocket, her hand surprisingly steady, and began recording. Their faces were clear in the mirror, every word captured sharply, like undeniable evidence in an American courtroom drama. After nearly a minute time, stretching endlessly, with the distant crash of Malibu waves, a reminder of her shattered dream, Sophia stepped back, her heart still racing, but her mind clearer. She met Alex at the end of the hallway, the young man still standing there with a comically nervous look, as if starring in an amateur spy flick. "Thank you," she said, her voice strangely calm, surprising Alex. "What's your full name?" Alex Ramirez replied, and when he revealed his cousin managed the resort's AV system, the large screens and speakers set for the ceremony, a dangerous, bold plan formed in Sophia's mind. Like a heroine in a revenge thriller. She sent him the video with detailed instructions. "Play it only when I signal." Alex nodded, his eyes flashing with resolve. What they did is wrong. Sophia felt a cold fury replace her pain, transforming her from victim to master of her fate. Sophia Thompson stood frozen in the dimly lit service corridor of the luxe seaside resort in Malibu, her heart pounding like the Pacific Ocean waves crashing against the nearby shore. But a cold fury had replaced the initial shock, as if a nurse in an emergency room had found her rhythm amidst chaos. The pain from Ethan and Brooke's betrayal, their cruel words about her unborn child, a regrettable complication, still echoing, had now transformed into a fire of determination. As sharp as the surgical blades she'd seen during tense operations at Los Angeles Children's Hospital, she looked at Alex Ramirez, the young server, with an unexpectedly resolute gaze, and issued instructions in a low but unwavering voice, like a Hollywood director preparing for a pivotal scene. Send the video of their betrayal to his cousin, who managed the resort's AV system, but only play it when she gave the signal. The phrase, "I want to share something special," would be her cue during the ceremony. Alex nodded, his expression a mix of seriousness and reluctant humor, as if he were an unlikely ally in a B-grade spy movie. "Consider it done," he whispered, adding with the earnest zeal of a true Californian, "What they did to you is wrong, totally not cool." Sophia nodded, feeling as though she were stepping into a new role. No longer the blissful bride, but a heroine about to rewrite the script of her wedding day. Back in the bridal suite, alive with Lily and Mia's laughter, the scent of luxurious perfume, and the sparkle of her wedding bouquet, Sophia embodied an image of serenity, as if still floating on the cloud of happiness her pregnancy hormones had conjured. She smoothed her white silk robe, smiling at Brooke as she offered feigned concern, her eyes darting like a supporting actress forgetting her lines. But Brooke didn't notice that Sophia's gaze had turned icy, harboring a dangerous plan, like the Malibu sun glinting off the ocean before a storm. Only her father, Thomas, with the intuition of a man who had raised Sophia alone through the years after her mother's death, sensed a subtle shift in his daughter's eyes. He pulled her aside, his voice a worried whisper, calling her by her childhood nickname, Livy, a name that evoked memories of evenings comforting her after nightmares. Sophia squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of the hand that had guided her through her darkest days, and whispered with a certainty that surprised him, "Trust her, no matter what happened today." Thomas nodded, his eyes flickering with confusion but brimming with faith, recalling the time Sophia stubbornly chose nursing over the real estate empire he'd envisioned for her. As she stepped into her elegant A-line wedding dress, tailored to flatter her fifth-month pregnant belly, Sophia felt as though she were donning battle armor. The dress, with its delicate lace trim catching the light like a California sunset, was no longer a symbol of love, but a shield for her newfound strength. In her mind, memories played like a cinematic montage. Brooke's comforting words after arguments with Ethan, which were actually veiled jabs at her appearance. "That dress looks good on you," even if the baby bump makes it tricky. Ethan's odd texts, always excused with dead phone battery or emergency meeting that she'd once laughed off like a forgiving audience. Now, it all revealed itself as manipulation, like a psychological thriller scripted too cleverly. Brooke, standing nearby, checked her phone with a nervous glance, then said hurriedly, her voice slightly off, as if caught red-handed, "Ethan, no. The best man texted that everything was ready." Sophia smiled, a smile as sweet as her favorite latte, but beneath it lay a plan as sharp as the Malibu waves carving through rock. Before the procession began, Sophia pulled Alex aside, pretending to adjust a bouquet to avoid the curious eyes of the bridesmaids. She whispered, her voice as calm as when she soothed young patients before a needle. When she gave the signal, the video must play on the main screen in the seaside garden where hundreds of guests awaited. Alex gave a thumbs up, his grin carrying the playful mischief of a Californian who knew he was part of a historic moment. "You're not just saving today, you're stealing the show." Sophia nodded, feeling her baby kick lightly, as if in solidarity with her mother, bolstering her resolve. As the bridal march began, a gentle piano melody filling the breezy garden of the luxe seaside resort, Sophia took her father's arm, stepping down the aisle strewn with cream rose petals. The smile on her lips was flawless, concealing the storm of emotions within a blend of pain, anger, and a bold plan poised to stun everyone. Each step was a countdown to a moment of reckoning, like the climactic scene in a Hollywood film where she'd once dreamed of being the heroine. Beneath the radiant canopy of white roses in the seaside garden of the Luxe Seaside Resort in Malibu, the gentle crash of Pacific Ocean waves served as a soft soundtrack, and Sophia Thompson's wedding ceremony began like a flawless scene from a Hollywood film. The sea breeze caressed her A-line wedding dress, accentuating her fifth-month pregnant belly, while hundreds of guests from fellow nurses to her father's real estate partners in Beverly Hills smiled in admiration. But within Sophia, a storm of emotions churned, restrained by the icy calm of a nurse who had faced tense emergencies. Her plan for retribution, hatched in the service corridor, now rested in her hands like the script of a thrilling movie ready to explode. As the gentle piano melody gave way to the personal vows, Sophia stood tall, her gaze sweeping over Ethan, who was about to become the centerpiece of a shock that even Hollywood directors would envy. Ethan stepped forward, his voice smooth as a well-rehearsed actor, resonating through the microphone, melting the guests with meticulously crafted deceit. He looked at Sophia, those brown eyes that once captivated her now merely a mask, and spoke of her compassion, of a future built on trust and respect. The guests applauded, some wiping tears, swept up in his performance. Sophia stood still, her smile a work of art, concealing the truth that she had seen his real script, a drama of betrayal in the third-floor bathroom, where her unborn child was called a regrettable complication. When her turn came, Sophia approached the microphone, her hand gently touching her belly, as if her baby were lending her strength. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of someone who had just uncovered the truth. She had prepared a different speech about love and the future. But life had thrown her an unexpected revelation, worth more than any romantic script. She turned to the guests, her eyes gleaming with determination mixed with a hint of mischief, like a heroine in a revenge film about to deliver a knockout punch. I want to share something special. The large screen behind the floral canopy flickered, and before anyone could guess, the video from the third-floor bathroom appeared sharp, undeniable, with Ethan and Brooke's faces clear under the lights. Their voices boomed through the speakers, like a public indictment, Brooke whispering about being tired of playing the supportive best friend, Ethan chuckling about his plan to exploit Thomas's Beverly Hills connections and stage a tragic divorce for profit. Worst of all, the phrase regrettable complication about Sophia's baby plunged the garden into a deadly silence, with only the waves whispering outrage on her behalf. Guests gasped, some covering their mouths, while Ethan paled, his eyes wild with panic like an actor forgetting his lines mid-scene. Brooke stood frozen, her fake smile vanishing, her hand clutching her phone as if she could crush the evidence. Sophia, with chilling composure, declared into the microphone, her voice ringing like a verdict. She would not marry Ethan today, and her friendship with Brooke ended right here. Ethan, in desperation, tried to grab her hand, his voice trembling as he mentioned the baby, but Sophia, like a warrior drawing her sword, responded with a resounding slap, prompting awkward laughter from a few guests, a darkly comedic moment amid the drama, as if the Malibu waves themselves burst into laughter. "Don't you dare use my child as leverage," she said, her eyes sharp as surgical blades. Thomas, her father, rose from the front row, his commanding presence that of a businessman who had tackled tough deals, ordering Ethan and Brooke to leave immediately. Ethan's mother, seated among the family, bowed her head, whispering apologies with a look of shame, as if she too had been betrayed by her son's charade. Brooke tried to explain, her voice faltering in panic, but Sophia looked at her with cold pity, as if seeing a forgotten supporting character in the script. She was merely a pawn in Ethan's game. And now both were exposed. As Ethan and Brooke fled down the petal-strewn aisle, leaving behind stunned silence and shocked stares, the garden seemed to quake with the power of the truth. Sophia stood there, her wedding dress shimmering in the sunlight, no longer the naive bride but a symbol of courage, ready to write the next chapter of her story. The seaside garden of the Luxe Seaside Resort in Malibu, once quiet after the shock of the video exposing the betrayal, now hummed with astonished murmurs, like the Pacific Ocean waves whispering secrets to the shore. Sophia Thompson stood steadfast beside her father, Thomas, under the canopy of white roses glimmering in the California sunset, in her wedding dress no longer a symbol of a shattered dream, but a mantle of a queen who had just reclaimed her crown. The pain from Ethan and Brooke's manipulation, their cruel words about her unborn child, a regrettable complication still smoldered, but Sophia, with the instincts of a pediatric nurse who had guided children through pain, transformed it into an explosive strength. She stepped to the microphone, her gaze sweeping over hundreds of guests from fellow nurses to Thomas's real estate partners, and declared with a calm but commanding voice, like a leading actress in a Hollywood film who had just found her climactic moment. The wedding was off, but the reception would go on. The food's paid for, the band's warmed up, and Malibu's too beautiful for one revelation to ruin the afternoon. She winked, a spark of playful California humor prompting laughter from some guests, as if the ocean sunlight itself were cheering her on. The guests, initially stunned, erupted into applause, as if Sophia had just directed a plot twist that would make an entire theater rise to its feet. The wedding transformed into a celebration of a new beginning, with the live band shifting to the upbeat melody of "What a Wonderful World." Thomas, her father, raised a glass of Napa Valley white wine, his voice resonating through the garden, a toast to his daughter's strength. The father-daughter dance began, Sophia taking his arm, feeling the warmth of the man who had been her lighthouse through the years after her mother's death. Their steps glided across the dance floor, Thomas's eyes shining with pride, as if seeing her mother's spirit in his daughter's resilient smile. Guests joined in, from nursing colleagues to college friends, each offering heartfelt encouragement. The head of pediatrics at Los Angeles Children's Hospital, a stern but fair woman, took Sophia's hand, offering her a promotion to director of a program with flexible hours for a single mother. "You're stronger than anyone I know," she whispered. And Sophia felt her baby kick lightly, as if in agreement. Meanwhile, Lily and Mia, her loyal bridesmaids, spotted Brooke trying to slip out of the garden, her silver-gray bridesmaid dress crumpled like her mood. They blocked her path, their eyes sharp like wary supporting characters in an American drama. Sophia, with the composure of someone who had weathered a storm, confronted Brooke in a secluded corner of the garden, where the salty sea air mingled with the scent of flowers. She looked into Brooke's eyes, searching for traces of the 15-year friendship that had once shared teenage dreams, but found only the jealousy that had corroded it. Brooke, her voice faltering, admitted her envy, always feeling overshadowed by Sophia, especially when Ethan appeared. Sophia, without a trace of anger, responded with gentle pity, like a nurse comforting a patient. She hoped Brooke would find happiness, but there was no longer a place for her in her life. Ethan, bold enough to return and offer excuses, appeared with an awkward stance, like a minor actor forgetting his role. Sophia cut him off, her voice sharp as a surgical blade, declaring she would raise her child with true love and that lawyers would handle child support. Thomas, standing behind her, his eyes burning as if ready to incinerate Ethan, ordered him to leave before he lost control, a tense yet darkly humorous moment, as if he were defending an entire real estate empire. As night fell, the garden became a heartfelt gathering, fairy lights twinkling like stars in the Malibu sky. The wedding cake, now without its bride and groom topper, was cut amid laughter and live music, like a ritual declaring freedom. Sophia, surrounded by those who loved her, felt a newfound strength, as if she had broken free from an old script to write a new chapter. The sound of the ocean waves blended with the band, reminding her that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. On the small wooden porch of a seaside cottage in Santa Barbara, California, Sophia Thompson stood still, her gaze lost in the horizon, where the Pacific Ocean shimmered under the August sunset, carrying the salty scent of the sea and the fresh aroma of pine, like a whisper of a new beginning. 8 months pregnant, her rounded belly was a testament to the fierce vitality that had emerged after the storm of betrayal at the Lux Seaside Resort in Malibu. This house, purchased with the honeymoon refund and savings from her long night shifts at Los Angeles Children's Hospital, stood as a symbol of resilience, not too far to continue her new role as program director. but far enough to leave behind the painful memories of Ethan and Brooke. The sea breeze caressed her hair, as if California itself were soothing and comforting a heroine who had just triumphed over a real-life drama, ready to write the final chapter with hope sparkling like sunlight on the waves. The little house, with its white-framed windows and ocean view balcony, was the kind of dream Sophia once thought existed only in the Hollywood rom-coms she watched with her mother as a child. She smiled, recalling the moment she stepped inside, her hand stroking her belly, feeling her baby kick gently as if cheering her on. Thomas, her father, along with Lily and Mia, her loyal bridesmaids from that fateful wedding day, had shown up with boxes and beaming smiles, turning moving day into an impromptu California-style picnic. They stood on the porch, popping open a bottle of non-alcoholic Napa Valley wine, laughing about how Sophia had turned her wedding reception into a celebration of a fresh start, like a brilliant director, rewriting the script mid-scene. Thomas, his eyes twinkling with the pride of a real estate mogul who had seen buildings rise from empty lots, raised a glass to toast, an unexpected ending and a courageous beginning. Sophia laughed heartily, a touch of humor creeping in as she teased her father about nearly punching Ethan into orbit at the wedding, a moment that sent Lily and Mia into fits of laughter, as if replaying a darkly comedic movie scene. The nursery, with its soft sea blue walls and a wooden crib hand-assembled by Thomas, was the heart of the house, where Sophia spent hours imagining a future with her child. Her new role as program director at the hospital, a career leap, offered flexible hours, a gift from the head of pediatrics, who had witnessed her strength on the wedding day. As for Ethan, his story ended quietly. His mother, ashamed of his actions, persuaded him to sign an uncontested divorce agreement, agreeing to child support, but keeping his distance an outcome Sophia called a relief, like shedding a role that no longer fit. Brooke, meanwhile, had fled to New York, her event planning career in tatters, after the wedding video went viral on social media. A leak, Sophia suspected, came from Mia, who posted Instagram stories at lightning speed. Though the pain still lingered, like the occasional cold breeze sweeping across the coast, Sophia felt liberated, as if she had stepped out of a psychological thriller to write her own script. As she stood on the porch, the sunset gilding her hair, Sophia felt her baby kick harder, a reminder of the strength she had found when all seemed lost. She placed her hand on her belly, whispering to herself and her child, the baby's name would be Hope, for that was the light she found in the darkness of betrayal. Thomas, Lily, and Mia, seated around the wooden table on the porch, raised their glasses again, their laughter blending with the sound of the waves, like a song of triumph. Sophia looked at them, her heart warmed by the genuine love of family and friends who had stood by her when her world crumbled. Her worst fear, losing love and friendship, had come to pass, but she realized it wasn't the end, but a chance to redefine happiness, American style, where dreams are built from ashes. Sophia's story, from a betrayed bride to a powerful woman standing on the Santa Barbara shore, had spread across social media, inspiring millions. If you walk away now, you'll miss the final lesson on turning pain into strength. Like, comment about a time you overcame adversity, and subscribe to never miss inspiring stories like this. The sharp crack of my husband's hand, a real estate millionaire, against my cheek echoed through the granite halls of the Museum of Modern Art in Los Angeles, silencing 300 elite guests in a frozen moment, the champagne glass shattering at my feet like a fractured destiny. My cheek burned, my heart pounded wildly as a familiar, warm voice sliced through the stunned silence. Please, continue enjoying the evening. It belonged to Alexander, my billionaire ex, the host of this charity gala. 20 years of a hollow marriage, narcissistic abuse, and the secret of my pregnancy at 42 all erupted before the crowd. If you've ever felt trapped in a perfect yet suffocating life, this story will awaken you. Miss it, and you'll regret not discovering how one slap changed everything. Emily woke each morning in a sprawling 15,000 square foot Beverly Hills mansion, where the chirping of birds echoed through meticulously trimmed gardens, and the aroma of French roast coffee wafted from the kitchen, a ritual. Michael, her husband, a tech mogul millionaire, performed himself as an essential part of the image of success he painstakingly crafted. Soft California sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling glass windows, glinting off Italian marble floors, yet Emily felt more keenly than ever the emptiness lurking beneath the glamorous facade. At 42, after years of futile, costly fertility treatments, she discovered she was pregnant. A pink line on the test appeared like an unexpected miracle, causing her to sink onto the cold marble bathroom floor. Tears streaming down from joy mingled with vague fear. But that joy dissolved swiftly when Emily stepped onto the terrace, where Michael sat with the Wall Street Journal and his phone, his Italian silk pajamas clinging to his frame, a symbol of success risen from nothing. She took a deep breath of Hollywood Hills air, wrapping her robe tightly around her, and whispered the good news. Michael looked up, his steely gray eyes appraising her like a risky investment, then repeated, "Pregnant?" His voice was flat, devoid of excitement, pure calculation. He pulled his hand away from her belly as if dodging a bothersome business issue, and Emily felt a chill run down her spine, not from the Pacific breeze, but from realizing this child, to him, was merely an unwelcome variable in his meticulously planned life. Emily had sacrificed so much to become the ideal wife Michael demanded. From the early days of their marriage, she gradually abandoned her fashion design career, a passion that once made her shine at Stanford University, to host lavish dinner parties for his Silicon Valley partners, smiling politely at their crude jokes and pretending not to notice Michael's flirtations with younger women at events. Old friends drifted away, subtly pushed out by Michael for being unsuitable for our new status. And Emily's dreams, like opening a small design studio in San Francisco, were buried under a glossy veneer of wealth. He controlled everything with finesse, tracking her spending through banking apps, secretly reading her emails to protect her from trouble, and isolating her from the outside world under the guise of love. Sometimes, Emily chuckled bitterly to herself, like when Michael gifted her a pricey diamond bracelet, but reminded her it reflected our success, making her feel more like a display piece than a wife. Through a video call with Sophia, her college best friend, now a marriage counselor in San Francisco, Emily began to reveal the cracks. Sophia listened as Emily described Michael's cold reaction to the pregnancy, gently pointing out that it wasn't mere shock but a sign of deep-seated narcissistic control. Emily initially denied it, justifying that Michael was just perfectionistic because he'd risen from a middle-class Queens, New York background to build a tech empire worth millions. But deep down, she knew Sophia was right. The subtle put-downs like, "You're lucky to have my guidance," or turning her into a prop for social media photos, were his ways of maintaining power. Standing on the terrace, gazing at the shimmering Hollywood Hills under the afternoon sun, Emily's hand instinctively cradled her pregnant belly, feeling gentle kicks from the tiny life inside a strength awakening, reminding her that life wasn't just about enduring, but about fighting to truly exist. Emily clutched the thick, cream-colored envelope in her hands, her heart racing like a warning from the past, as Maria the housekeeper brought it into the kitchen of the Beverly Hills mansion on a golden California afternoon. The miraculous pregnancy she once saw as a new beginning now seemed to weave a more intricate web, as the sender's address Hayes Foundation conjured the image of Alexander Hayes, the billionaire ex she left behind 22 years ago. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope, revealing elegant script inviting her and Michael to a charity gala at the Museum of Modern Art in Los Angeles, supporting education programs for underprivileged children in California, an event hosted by Alexander himself. In that moment, Emily felt as if fate was mocking the fragility of the perfect life she had built, where the child growing inside her served as a reminder that nothing could stay hidden forever. Michael, upon hearing the news, lit up with the excitement of an entrepreneur sniffing opportunity. He viewed the invitation as a business jackpot. Alexander's $10 billion tech empire, from software apps to green investments, being a target he'd long pursued. "This is the key to getting close to Hayes," Michael declared, his voice echoing through the expansive living room filled with costly Italian furniture, where Emily often sat alone gazing at the Hollywood Hills. He failed to notice or deliberately ignored the tremor in his wife's frame when Alexander's name was mentioned, the awkward Stanford boy she once loved passionately. Back then, Alexander was a computer science student with a warm smile, listening to her share dreams of fashion design without judgment, unlike Michael, older, more polished, but always guiding her to fit his mold. Emily vividly recalled her choice 22 years ago, abandoning Alexander out of fear she wasn't worthy of his wealthy Boston family, choosing Michael for financial security, a decision that now felt like fate's bitter jest, as she realized that security was merely a facade for isolation. Now, 20 weeks pregnant, Emily artfully concealed her baby bump beneath loose designer dresses, a skill honed from the social galas Michael forced her to attend. He hired a private investigator and expensive Los Angeles service to dissect every detail of Alexander's life, from business interests to charitable connections, turning the invitation into a strategy akin to a corporate merger. Emily watched him pace his office, scribbling notes in the margins of thick reports, a wave of nausea rising not just from pregnancy, but from his cold calculation. Michael saw Alexander as a rival, but Emily glimpsed in him the shadow of a lost freedom. Alexander had once encouraged her passions, while Michael gradually molded her into an accessory, a beautiful, silent wife, perfect for his public image. Sometimes, she chuckled bitterly to herself, thinking that if life were a Hollywood movie, Michael would be the charming villain, while Alexander was the romantic hero she'd written out of her script. During a therapy session with Dr. Harper in Beverly Hills, a warm space with soft leather chairs and gentle lighting, Emily finally confessed the fear swelling inside her. She spoke of how Michael made her feel outwardly secure but deeply lonely, as if living in a museum where she was both curator and the most fragile exhibit. Doctor. Harper listened, deftly pointing out that Michael's control wasn't love but narcissism, a subtle way to keep her small and dependent. Emily nodded, tears streaming as she recalled Alexander. He loved her for who she was, not a refined version, tailored for a world of power. The session ended with Emily staring out the window, where Los Angeles sprawled under the afternoon sun, and she wondered if this reunion would rekindle a long-extinguished spark of love or merely pour fuel on Michael's simmering anger, pushing everything to the brink. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. Emily sensed the invitation from the Hayes Foundation like a ticking time bomb, its soft pulse reverberating through the air of the Beverly Hills mansion, where outward tranquility masked the widening cracks from her miraculous pregnancy and memories of Alexander. Preparing for the gala at the Museum of Modern Art in Los Angeles became a sophisticated psychological warfare, with Michael orchestrating like a strategic general, transforming Emily into the perfect weapon to impress his billionaire rival. He spent hours in the expansive walk-in closet, selecting a black silk dress that hugged her 24-week pregnancy curves, but cleverly concealed them under delicate pleats, a rodeo drive masterpiece worth a luxury car. Standing before the mirror, Emily felt like she was auditioning for a Hollywood film, where the leading lady must dazzle without overshadowing the director's script. A hint of bitter humor crept in as she mused that, if life were a movie, Michael would surely demand the starring role, while she was merely a sparkling accessory. Sophia flew in from San Francisco, bringing not just clothes but the heartfelt support of the only friend left after 20 years of isolation. They wandered through Rodeo Drive's opulent boutiques, where sales staff treated them like royalty upon recognizing Michael's name on the credit card. Sophia, with her marriage counselor's insight, watched Emily try on dresses and gently posed a question that weighed heavy in the air. Was Emily attending this gala as Michael's wife or as herself? The question pierced like a needle through the facade, stirring the internal struggle Emily had buried, torn between fear of an uncertain future with her unborn child and a faint hope for a freer version of herself. Emily forced a smile, thinking wryly that if life were a comedy, her closet was the stage, where pricey dresses hid secrets swelling like her pregnant belly. The evening before the shopping trip, They attended a dinner with Michael's business partners at an upscale Hollywood restaurant, where polished mahogany tables reflected candlelight and powerful faces. The wives whispered about Alexander. He's never married, still carrying a torch for someone from his past, their gossip drifting like premium cigar smoke, prompting Michael to grip Emily's hand under the table with enough force to leave faint marks. Emily felt his jealousy surge, not just over business prospects but from the invisible threat of her past. Those whispers rekindled Stanford memories, Alexander spending hours in a cafe listening to her talk about design dreams without interrupting, unlike Michael, older and practical, always guiding her to fit his ambitions. Emily sipped non-alcoholic wine, chuckling inwardly at the irony. If Michael knew she was the someone from Alexander's past, he'd probably turn the dinner into a comical noir-style interrogation. In her next therapy session with Dr. Harper in Beverly Hills, where warm leather chairs and soft lighting invited truth, Emily delved deeper into those cracks. The doctor skillfully evoked college memories, helping Emily see that the past 20 years weren't a marriage but a luxurious prison, where Michael eroded her identity through subtle control, from choosing her friends to dismissing her dreams, shaping her into a version that suited his image of success. Emily felt emotions swell, from the pain of being diminished to a quiet anger for letting herself shrink nearly to nothingness. Doctor Harper suggested the invitation could be a chance to rediscover herself, but Emily left the office with mounting anxiety, especially after Michael's warning at dinner. "This is about our future, don't mess it up." His words echoed like a veiled threat, keeping Emily awake at night, her hand cradling her pregnant belly, wondering if the perfect mask would hold when she stepped into the museum, or if her past with Alexander would erupt like a long-primed bomb. Chandeliers glittered like falling stars, illuminating the Grand Hall of the Museum of Modern Art in Los Angeles, where 300 elite guests glided past each other like actors in a Hollywood film. But Emily's heart pounded wildly, not from the glamour, but because Alexander Hayes stepped into view. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver streaks at his temples, he still carried the warm smile from their Stanford days, now tempered by the confidence of a billionaire philanthropist. Emily, in a black silk dress, clinging to her 24-week pregnant curves, felt time rewind. 22 years dissolved, leaving memories of moonlit California nights. But Michael, her tech mogul millionaire husband, nudged her toward Alexander, introducing her as a prized asset in the deal he was chasing. Emily forced a smile, thinking bitterly that if this were a movie, she'd be the costly ornament Michael flaunted to seal $1 million contract. Tension flared the moment Alexander's gaze locked onto her, a deep look searching for the Emily of 22 years ago, the girl who dreamed of fashion design, not Michael's perfect wife. He paused, his breath catching, before greeting her with a warm voice, as if the 300 people around them, and Michael's calculated businessman's smile beside her, didn't exist. Emily sensed Michael's jealousy surging, like an undercurrent, as he gripped her hand tightly, steering her through the crowd to maintain control. Champagne trays floated by, white roses exuded a cloying scent, and the orchestra played a gentle waltz, but the air between them grew heavy, like the calm before a storm. Michael drank too much, each glass of champagne unraveling his polished veneer, exposing the insecurity he'd hidden through 20 years of marriage, the fear that Emily, despite his control, could still slip away. The tension escalated when Michael pulled Emily to a corner of the hall, near the granite staircase, where chandelier light reflected like shattered crystal. The elite crowd continued their chatter, but their glances began to linger, sensing unrest. Michael, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, accused her of lingering feelings for Alexander, each word like a razor-sharp knife slicing through the perfect mask Emily had worn for 2 decades. She stood there, hand cradling her pregnant belly, striving to stay calm, but her heart raced, as if the child inside sensed the approaching storm. Then, before the eyes of 300 guest senators, philanthropists, Hollywood stars, Michael erupted. His hand swung, delivering a stinging slap across Emily's cheek, the sharp crack echoing like a gunshot, causing the champagne glass in her numb fingers to slip and shatter on the granite floor. Her cheek burned, blood rushing like fire, and time seemed to freeze, the hall falling silent, the orchestra halting mid-note, every eye fixed on the public scandal. Alexander emerged from the crowd like a forceful gust, his face cold with restrained anger, stepping between Emily and Michael. He didn't need to shout. His presence and piercing gaze alone made Michael recoil, though he clung to a shred of arrogance despite his trembling voice. Victoria, Alexander's mother, her silver hair gleaming under the lights, moved through the crowd with the authority of an elite matriarch, ordering security to escort Michael out. The crowd whispered, phones discreetly recording, and Emily, still clutching her pregnant belly, felt a strange strength rising not from the pain, but from the collapse of the mask she'd worn too long. She locked eyes with Michael, her gaze resolute, declaring without words that she would not return to the home where he controlled her every breath. Michael was led away, leaving Emily amid the scattered crystal shards and 20 years of a hollow marriage, while Alexander stood nearby, his eyes filled with concern yet brimming with the kindness of the boy she once loved. Emily's cheek still burned, as if Michael's slap at the Museum of Modern Art in Los Angeles had seared not only her skin, but her soul, as Alexander and Victoria led her to a private room, away from the glittering chandeliers and the prying eyes of 300 elite guests. The small room, with its warm oak paneling and soft lighting, became a temporary sanctuary from the storm that had just shattered the facade of her 20-year marriage. Alexander's private doctor, a middle-aged woman with sharp yet gentle eyes, checked the baby's heartbeat with a portable ultrasound, confirming all was well, but warning that the stress from the public scandal could harm if left unchecked. Emily sat there, hand cradling her pregnant belly, feeling the gentle kicks of the tiny life inside, a reminder that she was no longer alone, yet no longer the perfect wife Michael had forced her to be. That slap, echoing like a gunshot before the crowd, didn't just shatter the champagne glass but demolish the wall of illusions Emily had built around herself. As Michael was escorted out by security, leaving her amid the sparkling crystal shards on the granite floor, Emily realized the past 20 years weren't love, but subtle abuse, financial control through monitored transactions, belittling her with snide remarks about her fashion design dreams, and isolating her from friends under the guise of social status. Victoria, with her silver hair gleaming and the authority of a Boston elite matriarch, stood beside her, her gaze both resolute and compassionate. She spoke softly, like a wake-up call, that sometimes the most practical choice isn't safety but happiness, an idea that made Emily chuckle bitterly to herself, thinking that if life were a Hollywood movie, Victoria would be the wise mentor, while she was the lead lost in the wrong script. Alexander, standing by the window overlooking Los Angeles's twinkling lights, promised to support her not with the coercion of a man seeking possession, but with the patience of someone who loved her 22 years ago. He didn't demand her return, didn't ask for affection, only offered a path to escape the home Michael called our success. For the first time in 2 decades, Emily felt a glimmer of freedom seeping through the cracks of her broken marriage. With Victoria's connections, she met a top Los Angeles divorce lawyer, a sharp woman who'd handled cases for Hollywood's elite. The decision to divorce came swiftly, not just because of the public slap, but because 300 witnesses, senators to movie stars, saw Michael cross an unforgivable line. Emily moved to a small Malibu apartment overlooking the shimmering Pacific, where she began rebuilding her life with temporary financial help from Alexander, not a gift of pity, but the aid of someone who believed she deserved freedom. Through therapy sessions with Dr. Harper, Emily dug deeper into wounds she'd once denied. The doctor, with a gentle yet incisive voice, helped her see that the abuse wasn't just the slap. It was years of Michael controlling every dress she wore, every email she sent, every dream she dared to dream. Sophia, flying in from San Francisco, became a lifeline, sitting with Emily on the Malibu balcony, watching waves crash against the shore, reminding her she was worth more than Michael's definitions. Emily began to heal, piecing together fragments of herself, not to become the two-year-old who loved Alexander, but to forge a stronger woman, ready to be a mother and live for herself. She smiled wryly, thinking that if life were a sitcom, These therapy sessions would be the inner makeover episode, where the protagonist learns to love herself before loving another. 6 months after the fateful slap at the Museum of Modern Art, Emily sat on a bench in Griffith Park, Los Angeles, where morning sunlight filtered through oak canopies, accentuating the crystal-clear laughter of Olivia, her 3-month-old daughter, with sparkling gray eyes, inherited from her biological father, but cherished as his own by Alexander Hayes. A cool breeze from the Hollywood Hills carried the scent of freshly cut grass, and Emily felt a peace she hadn't known in 20 years, not from a lavish mansion or a bank account, but from finally living true to herself. The divorce from Michael, thanks to the public scandal witnessed by 300 people, ended swiftly, granting her financial freedom to move to a 2-bedroom Malibu apartment, where Pacific waves soothed the buried dreams of fashion design. Olivia, in her stroller, babbled joyful sounds, as if she too sensed her mother's liberation. Alexander pushed the stroller with a father's tenderness, despite no blood ties, his eyes twinkling as he pointed out a squirrel scampering on a branch to Olivia. Emily smiled, musing humorously that if life were a Hallmark movie, this would be the perfect happy ending scene, only missing a soft acoustic soundtrack in the background. But this happiness wasn't a sudden miracle. It was forged through grueling months post-slap. Emily had reconnected with Alexander slowly, not from emotional pressure but because of his patience, waiting for her to rediscover herself. One quiet afternoon in her Malibu apartment, Alexander offered a simple silver ring, not flashy like the jewelry Michael once gave to flaunt, but a symbol of a promise. He would wait until she was ready for a shared future. Emily slipped it on, not as a wedding vow but as an embrace of possibility. Therapy sessions with Dr. Harper remained a guiding light, helping Emily untangle the fragments of an identity Michael had distorted. She learned to trust her judgment, from picking paint colors for her apartment to sketching new fashion designs, bold, free lines reflecting her true self. Sophia, flying in from San Francisco, became Olivia's unofficial godmother, bringing weekends of laughter and deep conversations over coffee, reminding Emily she was worth more than Michael's belittling words. Emily's new life wasn't as glamorous as the Beverly Hills mansion, but every choice from selecting Olivia's preschool to enrolling in a design course was hers alone, unbound by anyone's expectations. She chuckled to herself, thinking that if this were a sitcom, she'd be the protagonist rewriting her life script, with Olivia as the most adorable co-star. The healing journey wasn't always smooth. Some nights Emily lay awake, anxious about single motherhood or the lingering Hollywood gossip about the scandal. But each time Olivia clutched her finger, or Alexander shared a clumsy college story, she realized true happiness lay in simple moments, not the opulent illusions Michael imposed. She regretted not leaving him sooner, not for abandoning him, but for delaying her choice of love over fear. Alexander, with unwavering patience and kindness, showed her that true safety wasn't a mansion or money, but daring to live by her heart. In Griffith Park, as Olivia slept soundly in her stroller and Alexander held her hand, Emily understood that home was no longer a place, but a feeling of belonging with those who loved her for who she truly was. And have you ever dared to abandon false safety for real happiness? If you walk away now, you'll miss the lesson that helped Emily find light after darkness. Stay to see her triumph unfold. And you, my dear audience, brace yourselves for the next twist in this jaw-dropping story. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're truly loving what I'm doing here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe.